So wildlife conservation cannot happen. They are everything is a barrier, I see. So unless and until we take conscious efforts, unless and until the government, the citizens and the NGOs and corporates come together, we cannot protect wildlife, we cannot protect forests. So the barriers is human greed itself, which is taking different forms. For real estate, you want to clear. For tech parks, you want to clear. You want to go on a tourism. You want to explore the jungle and come back, but you do it in a very unsustainable way. So all these are barriers in wildlife conservation. But it is not something undoable. We just shouldn't take it to the brink of extinction, or do not take it to the level of irreversible consequences. So we are still within range and we can still do something about it.
I'll just unmute Mr. Shmuel.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting and insightful presentation. And I want to ask you a question. How, according to your opinion, wildlife can support improvement social and economic well-being?
Yeah.
So could you please repeat the question? I was just lost a bit there.
How does wildlife help social economic well-being?
So, as I've been mentioning, sustainable fishing practices, ecosystem conservation are all related to the social upliftment of the communities that live around them. Okay, so the success stories that we spoke about, Project Tiger or rhino conservation, are all happening because animals and these communities that live together share the same resources. So definitely there will be a retaliatory killing, and hence the government has come up with a process wherein these communities were integrated into the conservation practices. Okay, when nature's resources are conserved, definitely there is a social impact. The communities that depend on it are not depleted of the resources. Okay, for example, the fishing that happens around Chilika Lake, there are heavy trawler fishing that is actually happening. 90% of the fishing, commercial fishing, is all done by non-native fishermen. They're traders, they're not fishermen at all. So only 10% is done sustainably. So encouraging conservation practices and the government trying to involve community in conservation measures does have a social impact.
Yes, and I very much, and I want to ask you another question. If you recommending on integration elements of wildlife in our cities and towns.
Could you comment on integration of wildlife systems in our cities and town? Would it help create a balance?
Well, wildlife is, not just having apex predators next door. So that is not the point. So wildlife integration can happen. We talked about sparrow conservation in our earlier talk, right? So that is also wildlife conservation. And I can quote an example from my own home. We have water apple trees at home, and there are a lot of caterpillars that go around this plant. And after some time, we noticed some very strange lizard-like creatures crawling up the plants. And then we thought, what species have come in, and we kind of thought we should get rid of them. But then they actually became butterflies. So having pollinator gardens and having butterfly gardens and simple things, simple plants in your balcony that can attract wildlife, all this is wildlife integration into everyday life. Not shooing away a sparrow, letting the sparrow stay in your house is also a very, that is also integration.
Thank you very much.
Can I add on this socio-economic well-being? I'm not an expert, but as a layman, what I'm seeing is the mental health well-being and the physical well-being. When some 10 or 30 years ago, when people were living closer to the forests, the kind of nutrition we had. Today, when we're living in urban places, we have very limited items that we are eating. But when we're living in villages or closer to forests, the access to, as you said, wild fruit, when the first you asked us the question, what are the names of the wild fruits? For a minute, I couldn't name, but I remember eating so many of them when we were younger. And that access now has actually come down to a great level. And the next generation has no clue about these fruits. Why should we eat? Like, for example, regkailu. In Telugu, we call it regkailu. I didn't know what was the name. It was some kind of berries. And I remember we were having a meeting and people put polos and menthol and all these things, which are actually bad for the gut. Whereas when I put regkailu, there are certain people who really appreciated and certain people who did not even understand the value of putting this wide variety of traditional food on the meeting tables. So it is extremely critical for the health of people to have a varied kind of food habits which cover the different things that are there in the forest also, which is now going away. Number two, when I go to Europe, we see so many parks, gardens in between the city. Here in India, it's a very difficult thing to protect a park or a garden or even 100 acres in any city. We have a handful of eco fighters who are trying to protect these wildlife, these oases which are protecting wildlife in the cities. But now with India growing, economically progressing, there are a little bit of awareness slightly springing up who are fighting for these spaces to be protected. And I hope to see many such spaces conserved where the government, like for example, I wanted to protect one particular water body because right now what is happening is it is becoming a drainage. Instead, we can put a water treatment plant there, ensure the water is clean so that the bird species which originally come to these places, though that wildlife in urban areas can be protected. There is a need to protect it. Especially, I am extremely concerned about the well-being of the coming generation because they are completely detached. They are completely in their phones, completely in their iPads. Social regulations, emotional regulations is completely depleting. At a time like that, bringing them closer to the nature. Today, if I want to take my grandchildren out, there's not a park out there which I can take them to. I tried taking them to one park, it's stinking. It's stinking because the dump of the entire colony is put besides that park. So there is a need to protect urban forests, number one. Trishant, you should elaborate more about that. And for the well-being, mental well-being, especially now with all of us, again coming back saying, let's walk in forest, let's walk on the garden, let's walk. It is extremely important to live along with Mother Earth. The Mother Earth doesn't need us. As you said, we need them. We need to live along with it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm as a layperson, my perspective is not very articulate. But Trishant, do you want to add something?
Ma'am, not with respect to the same question, but I'd like to add one major point when it comes to protecting wildlife and green spaces in our country. As a layman or as regular citizens, I feel we've started looking down upon the right of protesting, and protest only has started working out in certain states where there's an opposition government. So, whereas the center ruled states are still dealing with the problems in the same old hush-hush way, and forests are being cleared out, river beds are being turned into concretized riverfronts. Slowly, we have news coming up from Hyderabad. A land was protected, a forest was protected but there due to citizen activism and a whole lot of protest and awareness. Same thing is happening in Jaipur right now. But a lot of unheard stories are getting suppressed in all the other states of India. And we need to bring back a certain amount of healthy protest, which can be later turned into something productive or a legal battle, which can bring us back to assessing what we know about wildlife, what we know about ecology, environment, and then take the necessary steps with the help of the government itself. It's not like we're trying to work against the government. We have to get the government to help us understand us and also other beings which are mostly silent. Moving on to the next one. I see a question from Mr. Sadikur Rahman Barua. Is it not necessary to take steps to reduce the monkey population, which has been growing in alarming rate for which farmers cannot grow vegetables, fruits in most parts of Assam? In fact, it is destroying rural economy.
Yeah, see, this is again an imbalance in wildlife, and man-animal conflict is again rising because we are encroaching into their areas. We are going into their homes. Okay, and it is again an initiative that the local government can take. Okay, so trying to shoo away monkeys will not help. There was one in Kerala, there was a regular trampling of sugarcane fields by elephants. So they came up with an innovation strategy of fencing, keeping an alarm fence. Initially, the community did not really appreciate it until they started seeing the results. The elephant came and it stopped after it touched a particular fence. Electric fences that don't harm but raise alarms, and the forest rangers will get into action and shoo them away. That's how both are coexisting. Okay, with respect to monkeys, also, there's no one solution fits all strategy. Okay, locally, which is the nearest forest or a university where you can go, catch all the monkeys and leave them and try and have enough food resources. If they are fed enough, they wouldn't come into your field at all. And limiting our fields and not encroaching forests and not, establishing, I told you, agriculture is one of the major driver for deforestation across the planet, not just in the country. So we have to somewhere bring some innovation, some technology, and local conservation, local community to develop a strategy that can help them at bay, that can keep them at bay. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Prashant, we had a similar talk, and I don't remember the speaker, but a lady from Tirupati had a similar problem where she was saying her coconut fields, and she was a very educated lady taking care of a farm in the outskirts of Tirupati. And when she asked the question, I remember the speaker answering that there's this particular person she's supposed to contact, whether it is the collector or I'm not sure which person in the government department. They will come and take those animals and put them, as someone has suggested, in less populated forests or in other places. That is one thing they do. Another thing they do, child planning operations on the animals so that they don't multiply too much without hurting them, without killing them. Yeah,
Ma'am, I sort of have a very pessimistic approach to this question, I would say, because every time we keep on questioning populations of wildlife and monkeys and everything, I'd rather question the human population because it is that which is growing exponentially. It is breaching into all of the wildlife lands. Our farming techniques are not very sustainable for other animals as well. We are taking over their land and expecting them not to encroach their own land or consume within their own wildlife habitat. So I think we need to concentrate more on farming techniques that don't encroach the wildlife land and maybe vertical farming techniques or innovative methods that allow us to farm vertically in a system or create a system that can sustain. Other thing is the human wildlife conflict is only going to increase because our population is just going up. It's not going to go down. So our farming needs, our livestock needs, everything just keeps on multiplying. When we farm meat, we need more farms, we need more cattle land for them. So we are just going south ways. We are going, I mean, in the opposite direction of all we know at the moment. And it is essential that we don't think of all of this while keeping human beings in center. We have to keep all of the other beings in the center too. Right now, we always talk about us being in the center and everything rotating around us. We have to have a very different approach where we are moving forward hand in hand with all of the other beings that are there. So this question doesn't really make much sense to me. It questions the population of wildlife, which we have been continuously messing around with, and it does not question human population needs and how we can control our overconsumption and multiplication or anything like that. I don't know if you agree, but that's my opinion, I guess.
Shrikant, whatever views that you have expressed, that are exactly the similar lines in which the conservation measures that succeeded speak about. Okay, for example, Rhino Vision 2020 is a successful approach because it made a rhino-centric approach.
True.
And Project Tiger was successful because it made a tiger-centric approach. Because once these species are conserved, the rest of the habitat falls in place. It takes care of humans as well. It takes care of other species in the lower ranges and the entire ecosystem itself. So I think you were very much right in what you told.
Thank
We
you.
have to approach the problem with wildlife-centric approach.
I'm totally aligned with what you're saying, Krishant. Like, we think only our brothers and sisters are someone we should live together. No, we need to live together with these species along with them, not
Mm.
as we are the only species that need to exploit the earth.
True, ma'am.
Totally. Yeah.
Moving on to the next one, there's a question from Devasmita Datta. If IUC and red listing would IUC and red listing be beneficial for protection of rare species?
Yeah. See, IUCN is an international union for conservation of nature, and it's an international organization that is, I must say, doing commendable work. Okay. Only when you list something that is under threat, you will work towards conserving it, right? And one of the Project Tiger's success is also attributed to IUCN. And IUCN not just lists wildlife, it also lists plants as well. So all the endangered species, all the threatened, all the vulnerable species are listed under IUCN. And once these species reach a certain population, they will move up the ladder. Okay. So yes, it does help because you know which species is where and what efforts should you keep to push the species population up.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question in the chat box. What are the biggest systems level barriers in wildlife conservation and environmental protection? That means the government systems, biggest barriers in protecting wildlife conservation and environment.
See, biggest barrier is what Trishant rightly said is the explosion of human population, human greed, and development, urban development, and all these are barriers. Okay, it was Kancha Gachibowli a few days back, and now it is Jaipur lands that are being cleared. So wildlife conservation cannot happen. You know, they are the everything is a barrier. I see. So unless and until we take conscious efforts, unless and until the government, the citizens and the NGOs and corporates come together, we cannot protect wildlife, we cannot protect forests. So the barriers is human greed itself. Which is taking different forms. For real estate, you want to clear. For tech parks, you want to clear. You know, you want to go on a tourism. You want to explore the jungle and come back, but you do it in a very unsustainable way. So all these are barriers in wildlife conservation, but it is not something undoable. We just shouldn't take it to the brink of, extinction, or do not take it to the level of irreversible consequences. So we are still within range and we can still do something about it.
Thank you. I'd like to make that more maybe pointer wise. I think one, we have policy and governance failures. We have economic and market pressures. We have land use conflicts and habitat loss. We have industrial and development pressures. We have social inequities and lack of community involvement. We have lack of education and awareness about wildlife and environment. We have scientific and technical challenges while we are still learning about species and animals. We are continuously wiping them off at a faster rate. We have slow institutional adaptation and bureaucracy. Climate change is adding on as a multiplier. Global inequities and weak international coordination. Yeah, that's 10 points that I can point out at the moment, which sort of elaborates all the issues humankind is probably thinking.
Prashant,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to add one thing here.
Yes,
I
please.
think we have to make environment a mandatory subject in institutions. It is already there, but the way it is being approached is not the right way. Even we had an environment subject in engineering, and I never attended it because it's like a free class. You would always want to skip, and there are no credits for it. You only have to just secure 35%, which you can do with, very short amount of learning. But environment as a subject has to be included in educational institutions in a more interactive manner and practical way in which we all feel environment is a part of our life. It's a way of life.
Ma'am, I completely agree with you. I have a niece. She's studying in Germany right now. She's living in Germany and she's 4.5 years old. And she's in a school which is a sort of an alternative school. They have it's the education, the classes are completely outside. It's not in a building or anything like that. It's in the nature. They have llamas around them, they have dogs around them, they have animals that probably have been rescued due to human wildlife conflict, living in confined but very huge naturesque spaces. And the kids actually interact with the llamas, with the dogs in a very beautiful manner. And the teacher tells them how to not interact, how to interact, how to respect personal space of any wild being. And it is very essential because as phones are coming in, as screens are coming in into our existence, we are losing the empathy for all of the other beings. And that one-on-one interaction with any wild being would, or any domesticated animal is very necessary to develop an empathy for any other being. And yes, we have to integrate that kind of a system in India, if possible, in the coming years.
I want to add to this.
Yes, please. A question from Mr. Prasad Supineni. Do you think Project Cheetah has achieved desired level of success?
So we imported cheetah, right, from Namibia to Madhya Pradesh. Is it that you're talking about, sir? See,
I
any which
think so.
ways, yes, that is the question. So for a project to be declared success, it cannot happen in such a short span. Okay, I guess very recently, I mean, probably a couple of years ago, Supreme Court said, yes, you can bring in cheetahs from Namibia, because earlier we lost them, and now again they're being brought. And we are not giving them enough habitat to grow upon, and habitats are being fragmented. So is it a success or not? We have to wait and see. Once the population thrive, once they get integrated with the native biodiversity, only then we can say if Project Tiger is a success or not.
I think we are doing trial and error method with the animals at the moment instead of actually not interfering. We have some of us also have started getting in exotic species of birds and animals in the name of conservation, especially to places like Gujarat, where the temperatures are not at all fit for these species of animals. Certain parts of Gir have been privatized and been turned into, say, a conservation forest, but they are pretty much like a private zoo. So it's going south when it comes to ecological, except for the lion population and the tiger population. I think the other species of or conservation of exotic species is not going so well when it comes to India. And we should also be careful or considerate about our climate. While we are bringing in other species to this country, we have a habit of getting in non-indigenous dog species like Siberian Huskies to places like Gujarat, Maharashtra. We have a habit of using them as accessories or I don't know what. But yeah, we've been doing this. We've been getting species which are not native to India. And it just changes the thinking of human beings and it just encourages, accessorizing animals more and more. We are getting in. It's just so we have to be a little more sensitive about the land we live in and what animals are already living here. How can we protect those rather than getting in species from other country in the name of protection? We should also try to do localized indigenous way of protection for each and every species in each and every country, not just India.
Actually, it is very important that we plant native trees. Okay, so native trees mean a lot of importance to the local ecology. They help the native biodiversity, they help in water conservation. So we have to be very conscious in not just, bringing pets. Very rightly said by Trishant that we have to support indigenous breeds, and we also have to support indigenous plantations. So indigenous plantations, native tree species, for example, the Chennai Coimbatore market, they planted all native trees, and now they're seeing a lot of comeback in terms of wildlife. 35 species of butterflies and 60 odd species of birds have come back, which otherwise they thought have vanished. Okay, so this is very